a lot of villains in comic books, and they're pretty essential, and while none of them are particularly well liked within their respective universes, some stand out among the rest as particularly unlikable. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd, and this is the top 10 most hated comic book villains. Coming in at number 10 is Doomsday. Doomsday is easily DC's scariest monster, and as such is more feared than hated, but I'd say the two can go hand in hand. Doomsday is essentially just pure destruction. He was able to bring down the Justice League and take the life of Earth's premier hero, Superman, in his first appearance. Doomsday doesn't speak, he can't be reasoned with, and the only way to stop him is to beat him harder than he will beat you. Problem is, Doomsday was created on the planet Krypton as the ultimate life form, tested against that planet's harsh environment and eventually against the Kryptonians themselves. Doomsday's whole life cycle involves it being killed and then coming back stronger than whatever killed it. Over decades that involved thousands of deaths, Doomsday essentially became a nearly undefeatable monster with no other thought process beyond destroying everything in front of him and moving on. All he does is punch things to pieces, and the only way to stop him is to beat him however you can and as quickly as you can before he does too much damage. Number 9. Joker. The Joker is the quintessential comic book villain. He almost outshines the hero he was created to oppose. He's a scene-stealing, fan-loved villain, but he is also one of the most psychotic, vicious, and unrelenting villains in Gotham City. Villains can't even attempt to take out Batman without having to think about how the Joker might retaliate. Teaming up with the Joker is just as likely to see you end up in the grave. He simply does not care about anything other than Batman, and will do literally anything and go through anyone and everyone to torment the guy. While the other criminals of Gotham's underworld may find him completely unpredictable and untrustworthy, because he is, he has such a powerful reputation as one of the most ruthless villains in history that he has their respect, if not their fear. But at the same time, he is one of those villains that we, the fans, absolutely love to hate. We love seeing the Joker show up because we know some absolutely bat crap crazy stuff is about to go down. Pun intended. Number 8. Mephisto. If you are a ruler of hell, you don't really need to worry about whether people like you, and honestly, it's probably way better for you if they hate you. You don't owe anyone anything, so it's not surprising that Mephisto is not really a well-liked individual in Marvel Comics. His whole shtick is manipulation, and he does it well, tricking people into doing things they would never normally do when they are at their absolute lowest. He has caused a whole boatload of horrible things in Marvel Comics, from the erasing of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson's marriage, the creation of Green Goblin and capturing the soul of Dr. Doom's mom, Cynthia Von Doom, to being a major villain for the Silver Surfer, Thor Odin's son, and every single iteration of the Avengers throughout history. But while he plays a villain role, other villains aren't immune to his manipulations either, and so it's pretty easy to say that when anyone has a run-in with Mephisto, you won't see a very big smile on their face. Number 7. Purple Man. So, while Mephisto has a knack for manipulating people through wordplay, Zebediah Killgrave, the Purple Man, has the power of persuasion through pheromones that essentially lets him use words to completely override the willpower of others. While Killgrave used his power to commit normal crimes like robbing banks, he also more predominantly would use his ability to manipulate women to fulfill his own desires. And that, on its own, kind of bumps Purple Man up a notch in terms of really despicable villains, especially as through his manipulation of women, with his power, he has had many little purple boys and girls, and he then used them as what was essentially his own little army. It's sick and it's messed up. Now they eventually resisted his influence and used their own abilities to make Killgrave walk in front of a streetcar. While he was originally a daredevil villain, Purple Man also became more synonymous with Jessica Jones thanks to the absolutely horrible way that he would constantly use her in the infamous Alias story. Purple Man is materialistic in just about every single way. Money, expensive clothes, fancy dinners, and nice hotels. Anything he wants is at his fingertips. All he has to do is ask for it. And having that sense of authority has given Killgrave an immense sense of entitlement, which makes him incredibly easy for us to hate. Number 6. Victor Zsaz. Batman has one of the best rogues galleries. We already talked about one of them. But more often than not, most of his villains are just regular people. Men and women who are the worst of the worst, which arguably makes them much more terrifying. Among some of the most fear-inducing would be the Beast of Gotham, Victor Zsaz. Zsaz is a sociopath, and one of the most unrelenting in Batman's lineup. He believes that human beings are mindless robots who attempt to give themselves purpose and meaning by materialistic and shallow means, and for that, they need to be ushered into the afterlife at the end of one of Victor's many blades in order to free these zombies, as he calls them. But in keeping with real-world serial killers, Zsaz will ritualistically dispatch his victims, leaving them in lifelike poses for the authorities to find. What is most striking though about Zsaz is that for every life he takes, he will mark himself with a tally on his own skin to remind himself that he is human and is not one of those zombies that he's taking out. Now I don't know if you noticed, but he is covered literally head to toe in these tallies. Now if that weren't terrifying enough, he is more than capable physically as he is mentally. He took down 4 police officers who were restraining him using nothing more than a pen and the very restraints he was being held with. He has also been able to get the upper hand on Damian Wayne, who was trained by the League of Assassins, which is nuts. But this guy is also unrelenting. When Zsaz was in Arkham Asylum, he had constructed a tunnel to escape out into Gotham to commit more crimes. And then he would go back to Arkham Asylum. What's up with that? I don't know. I don't know if Zsaz is as hated as he is feared, but he should be both. Number 5. Carnage. While DC Comics has Victor Zsaz, I think an easy equivalent in the Marvel landscape would be Cletus Cassidy, the main host for the Carnage symbiote. Cletus has a pretty mysterious background, and all we know is from his own recollections, which could be completely fabricated. His past saw him shift from home to home, from horrible parental figure to horrible parental figure, some of whom he may have dispatched in his youth, and he went into the foster care system where he burned down an orphanage. I don't even know if I can say that on YouTube, I don't even know. He has a messed up past, which unfortunately leads to a pretty messed up person if they aren't given the proper treatment. Cassidy became a notorious serial killer, a career choice that was improved upon when he found himself bonded to the symbiote Carnage. Together, these two caused chaos, becoming one of the main villains of not just Spider-Man, but also Venom. But you rarely see Carnage even work with other villains, except for Maximum Carnage, because of its destructive and selfish intentions. The only time you really see Carnage with other villains is when it's separated from Cletus, at which point it's only using those other villains for its own goals, like when it bonded to Norman Osborn, creating the Red Goblin, which was both absolutely terrifying and kind of really cool. Right now, Carnage is on a mission to become the new God Butcher, just like Gore and Null, probably in an attempt to oppose Eddie Brock as the King in Black. Number 4. Vulcan. Kind of like Cletus, the third Summers brother, Gabriel Summers, otherwise known as Vulcan, is pretty unlikable, but it's also not entirely his fault. Gabriel has been used by multiple different parties since his birth. His mother, Catherine Summers, had her life taken by the Shi'ar Emperor Deacon, or however he wants to pronounce it, but I guess I'm just going with that one, as a punishment for his father, Christopher Summers' actions. The Shi'ar took Gabriel and artificially aged him up and used him back on Earth. So, he was robbed of his childhood, which essentially meant that Vulcan has a tendency to act like a huge brat sometimes. After being saved by Moira McTaggart, Vulcan was drafted onto a team of X-Men that perished at the hands of Krakoa. Professor X then wiped everyone's mind of this team of X-Men, which was incredibly messed up. Now because Vulcan absorbed the energies of his teammates, he was able to survive, but after coming back and fighting the X-Men and Xavier for some understandable vengeance, Gabriel took off into space and essentially took control of the Shi'ar Empire, marrying the black sheep of the Shi'ar royal family and using his massive power to beat the Royal Guard and take the life of Deacon. He then had huge run-ins with other galactic empires as he tried to extend the Shi'ar's reach. While he eventually returned to Earth and seemed to be chill for a little while, he went back down the path of villainy, and now he is being constantly used by Abigail Brand. So essentially, Vulcan, while sympathetic, is a huge unstable jerk who is constantly used by people he should be able to completely obliterate, and he not only ticked off the X-Men and Earth's heroes on multiple occasions, but also whole intergalactic empires. Number 3. Omega Red. During the Cold War, the mutant known as Arkady Rossovich was forced into a Soviet version of the Weapon X program in order to become a Russian super soldier. Arkady's mutant powers were both a healing factor like Wolverine and Sabertooth, and a unique ability known as death spores. Arkady could produce spores from his body that essentially killed people, and he did this a lot, basically becoming a serial killer but in ways that were incredibly brutal. This put him into the ranks of some of the most despicable villains around. But once he was captured by the KGB and placed into the program I talked about before, he was given cybernetic enhancements and tentacles controlled by his mind, all made out of carbonadium, a metal that was more malleable than and almost as strong as adamantium. These enhancements made Arcady a much more capable killer, but the carbonadium was also incredibly toxic, to the point that without a synthesizer, Omega Red would need to drain the life force of another person once every single day using his tentacles in order to survive. The quest for a carbonadium synthesizer led him into conflict with Wolverine, becoming one of the main members of his rogues gallery, and those guys are usually the worst of the worst. Number 2. Sabertooth. While we're on the topic of Wolverine's villains, it would be utterly stupid to not mention his number 1 rival, Sabertooth. Victor Creed seems to be bad simply because he enjoys it. As a kid, he took the life of his older brother Luther over a piece of pie, and he was absolutely ruthless to his younger brother Saul, who he would make a habit of putting a beat down on, particularly on Saul's birthday. When his mutant powers manifested, it only made bringing harm to others even easier for him. He eventually took out his own father before going on a rampage through 3 Canadian provinces at just 13 years old. He would become a bit of a wanderer through his life, moving from different careers that allowed him to take advantage of his power in order to spill blood. He eventually turned his savagery towards Wolverine, who has taken the life of Saul. Sabertooth, in a really sick way, replaced Saul, his younger brother, with Wolverine, making it his goal to make Wolverine's life absolute hell, especially on Wolverine's birthday. He would beat Wolverine to within an inch of his life, and anyone Wolverine welcomed into his life, like those he would fall in love with, became Victor's newest victims. When he was forced into Weapon X alongside Wolverine, he became even more of a killing machine, and from there he basically became the muscle, claws, and teeth for many other villains. Not only is Sabertooth incredibly savage and insanely ruthless, but he's also just a mad dog used by the worst of the worst. And finally, in at number 1, it's Red Skull. For most on this list, they are hated for their savagery, the fear they induce, or how they despicably abuse their power. For Red Skull, it's very easy to acknowledge why he is incredibly hated. Johann Schmidt aligned himself, became the poster boy for, and actively continues to support one of the most famously infamous groups in world history. They are so bad that I literally can't even say their or their leader's name on YouTube without getting demonetized. If you have been in any history class that has ever talked about World War II, then you know who we are talking about. For this reason, the Red Skull is hated even among other villains. Magneto has famously trapped Skull in a bunker with no light and just 10 jugs of water for his past. The Joker, a villain from a completely different publisher who is on this list, has attacked the Red Skull for his involvement in World War II. The other thing about Skull is that he is the adversary for one of the most respected heroes in Marvel Comics, Captain America, the hero that even villains will listen to. It only makes sense that the adversary for Cap would be one of the most despicable and hated villains in the Marvel Universe. And that's the end of the list. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching here at Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace out, nerds. Bye.